There we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome. Hi, Rachel. How are you?
Hi, Terry. Hello, everybody.
Oh, it's so nice to be here. So, I just wanted to say hi to everybody and welcome. You've probably met Rachel before. She's been on the show a couple of times. So, this is your third time, I think.
Yay.
Yay. I'm so excited. We're so excited to have you back. And I'll just tell you a little bit about Rachel. Rachel earned a master's degree in counseling psychology and works as a trauma recovery coach. Um, so she provides a compassionate and challenging approach for her clients while using coaching as opposed to therapeutic models. Rachel is a member of the International Coach Federation and San Francisco Coaches. She is also the author of Beyond Surviving, which I know quite a few of you have bought. So it's available on Amazon
Mhm.
and just an amazing book. And we're so happy to have you here, Rachel. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah.
Just a little, I'm no longer a member of the coaching thing, but
Oh,
it's okay. And I'm actually just in the process of going through republishing my book. And so I'm excited. I'll send you a copy when it comes out, Terry, and it's going to have a whole new cover and new bio on the background, an updated picture of me, and a few tweaks to the interior. Most of the interior content is the same, but it did give me a chance to go through and make a few changes that
yeah.
I've been really dreaming of and making. And so um, I will make a note to send you that new copy when it comes out.
Oh, thank you so much. And Tyler thanks you as well. He's really happy you're here, my dog. So
Oh yes, Tyler, I missed you,
he's
Tyler.
always in the background. Sorry, guys. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So, well, I'm excited for that. I don't know what kind of changes you could have made, but because this is so comprehensive. But
Mostly around just wanting to be more inclusive. I looked for opportunities to share stories of, people who are non-binary, LGBTQA. There was a little bit of languaging changes that I wanted to make, just like updating, fine tweaking some of that.
yeah.
But the heart of the matter is still there. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I can't wait to see it. Yeah, it this everybody I've been coached by Rachel and it is amazing. And the whole time that I was going through the process with you, I took a course with you and it was like um, I thought everybody needs this because it's really about healing from sexual trauma, childhood trauma, a lot of it, but everything in there applies to everybody, really.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's been one of the nice, wild things, fun, interesting, compelling about my work. Exactly. I really started from the place of 17 years ago of what do I need to do to actually heal from childhood sexual abuse that I experienced by my grandfather. And I'd been living my life and walking these roads and still at however old I was in 2007. I can't do the math. I was
And
in my almost 30, approaching 30. Um, I was just in such a place of like, gosh, I feel like I'm just surviving my life. And is that all it's going to be? Because certainly a lot of the therapists I worked with or books I read seemed to paint this picture of it being this kind of life sentence. And for me, Terry, I was like, well, F that. That doesn't sound great. And so developing the program, yeah, really started from the lens of just wanting to heal myself and share what had really worked for me in that process, and then to work with people who had experienced also childhood sexual abuse. And then for sure, over the years, it's been beautiful to see how it has expanded and how I've been able to work with people who have experienced different types of trauma, are coming from different places. And yeah, to start to kind of just see where I sometimes joke that Beyond Surviving is one part trauma integration and healing and one part growing up. And like just getting the life skills and the relationship skills that we need to really thrive, in our lives. And so, yeah, thank you for that. And there is a fun way in which it's like, wow, it's starting to reach people in different communities and for different reasons and different purposes. And that's really fun to see how it's starting to expand out.
Yeah, I think at least once a week I'm using it in the group here. Um,
Nice.
and we talk about a lot of things. We have chat every morning, Monday through Friday, and then we do meditations. And
Mhm.
there's always something like thinking outside the box. Have you boxed yourself in? What's your story?
Yeah.
There's so many tools, and it is like changing your behavior, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, very much so, very much so. I think it's, when we find ourselves, impacted by trauma, by abuse, it really shapes the lens that we use when it comes to how we see ourselves,
Yeah,
how we see others, and even how we relate to various things like asking for support or love or relationship or trust. And so I think just a big, big part of that healing process and journey is, kind of what we talked about there in our work, Terry, right? Shedding those layers. What happens when I start to, take away the thoughts and the ideas and the reactivities and the triggers and the sensations that have been placed there as a result of the injury of abuse, and as I shed those things and pull those things away, what comes into, presence and being more often than not is my authentic self, my empowered self, my adult self
yeah.
that has the capacity, right, to navigate things from a really empowered place.
Love that. Love that. Yeah. Annie says healing becomes a spiritual practice, our gift.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
beautiful sentiment. Yeah, I love that.
that is
Yeah.
beautiful. Love that, Annie. Um, well, it is what I liked about it too. Another thing that I loved about it, Rachel, is that you're
Mm.
funny and you're curious
Yeah.
and you are you bring it in with a sense of joy,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
go think. I mean, who would have
Yeah.
thunk it was possible that um, healing from trauma would have be
Mhm.
kind of fun. I mean, not to say there aren't moments of a lot of tears. There's
Mhm.
also moments of laughter and joy.
Yeah.
So it's a balance. It's a
Yeah.
balance. Um, so I really wanted to talk to you today about self judgment
Mhm.
because I feel like so many of us here are going through that right now. It's like
Mm.
perhaps we've been to a lot of therapy, we've done a lot of spiritual practices, and all of a sudden something's coming up from a long ago thing that you thought, oh, I went through that. I've already healed from that. And then you're getting another self judgment that's coming through, like
Mm,
another facet of it, perhaps.
mm, mm, mm. So, do we want to start by just understanding the journey of healing in that context? Because one of the ways I think we might be beating ourselves up the most and judging ourselves is with that narrative. See, I'm right back where I always been. Oh, I'm right
Exactly.
back there doing the same damn thing.
Yeah.
And how do we get perspective and understanding about that? We start
Yeah.
there.
I love
Okay.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Got it. So, there's a beautiful philosopher. It starts with an H. I can't remember the full name. One of his most famous sayings, though, is that we never step into the same river twice. And so, if we can just take a moment to visualize this idea that there's this, river running, and we step up to the edge of the river and we're on the bank of the river and we're standing in maybe what we even consider our favorite spot, and we know it's that spot because there's that little rock that's right there and there's the little tree that's right there, and so we know we can always come back and orient to this exact same spot on the bank, sort of,
Mhm.
and then we dip our toe in the water and we walk away, and that was that experience and that was that moment, and then we come back the next day. And because we do this thing as humans with our brains, right? We compartmentalize and we take limited data and we look for what's the same. Yeah. And so we psychologically say, I'm standing in the exact same spot on the bank of the river and I'm putting my toe into the river and it's the same. But if you really pan out and you take a bigger, broader look at that, actually, that beautiful tree has a few less leaves today. And over there on that rock, there's a little snail crawling around today that wasn't there yesterday. And of course, literally, the water that you are putting your toes in, completely different water. It's not the same water that was there yesterday. So one of the things we have to cultivate when we're healing is that there actually is no such thing as going backwards. It doesn't exist. We literally can't. Until we invent time travel, we literally cannot go backwards. We are always forward. And so let's say you, okay, I'll take a personal example, right? So holding my temper was a thing for me, right? And learning not to be quite so hot-headed and quick to rage and quick to anger. And so I was working through the lens of like, okay, I've had these lived experiences of all these moments where I've, popped my top and I've lost it. And I'm starting to see the negative impact that that's had on me and that's had on other people. And so, you know what, I'd really like to evolve that part of myself and have kind of a more peaceful, being that comes in and be able to navigate upsetting moments with more resilience and groundedness. And so I'm working on this and I'm working on this and I'm like, ooh, hey, look, that person. And I got upset by what they said. And I was cool as a cucumber and like, go me, I'm fabulous, right? I celebrate, I'm excited. And of course, my internal systems are like, okay, great, check done. And then 2 weeks later, something happens and my window of tolerance is smaller. I haven't slept as well. I didn't eat any breakfast. And then I tried to have a major conversation without any food. Big mistake. And my level of like distress, anger, reactivity goes way up. Okay. Now I can at first say, look, see, I haven't changed. I haven't healed. Here I go again. I'm doing the same old thing again. But I'm not. Because this circumstance of who I'm with is different. The day and time is literally different. If I start to really get self-aware, maybe my levels of intensity are different. How long it lasted is different. How quickly I course corrected is different. And so to summarize, there's a lot more that could be said, but before I go on for forever and ever, what I want you all to hear from everything that I'm saying is that you have to stay out of macro and you have to pay attention to micro. On the surface, it looks like anger, losing my temper in the macro. Right. But when I start to look at all of the micro changes, things are different. Yeah. And so I actually have, on the whole, done something different. And then if I keep tweaking and I keep tweaking and I keep tweaking, then eventually I get to the place where it's very seldom to not at all that I show up in that way or find myself, behaving in that way or having that reaction, etc. Terry, is this making sense? What do you want to add? What's it bringing up for you? What do you hear in there?
I do really like it. And I like, part of what came into me is that it's not measuring, but it's awareness.
Yeah.
That you're not measuring like, well, I was 5 inches last week and this week I'm only 2 inches ahead or whatever, a literal measurement, but it's an awareness of, oh, look at all the changes that I've made and being fully aware of that and giving yourself credit for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So kind of changing your story that you're not backsliding as you are moving forward and finish that thought for me, Rachel.
Yeah, you literally cannot backslide. You literally can't. Yeah. And all that can happen is that you're revisiting a component or an energy and that there's something new to be learned. or
Yeah.
there's something else that is you're working on tweaking. Like, oh, this time around, I see how, ooh, I caught my energy a little bit sooner rather than later this time.
Mhm.
Okay, great. And now, like a month from now, maybe something comes in that pings that thing in me again. And then I notice, oh gosh, the thing that really helped me move through that more quickly was when I really said out loud, I'm about to lose my shit. I should probably take a break. Right? And
Sure.
so you're layering in new data and new information. And sometimes, yes, there are also like little pieces that have to be like resolved and need to be broken off. Yeah. And it can't be broken off in the first round. It might take a
Right.
few rounds
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah. And being aware of that, like having
Yeah.
breakfast. Yeah.
But I
Little
promise
changes.
you all, if when you're doing that evolution of self and you're breaking off the little piece or you're doing your little micro tweaks, if you're doing all of that underneath the umbrella of what the F's wrong with me, and here I go again, and I'm such a loser and I'm such a failure and I can never really heal and I'm never going to get any better and I'm just too broken, well, then you miss all of the lessons of the moment, by the way, and you don't actually get to shift or move forward. And all of your energy has now gone over into the shame bucket and into self judgment. And you've just reinforced all of that. So now you have two problems that you have to solve. Now you have to solve all of that junk that you just created with all the self judgment and blame and making yourself bad and wrong. And guess what? You're still going to have to come over here and deal with this thing too. So I say, how about we just save ourselves the trouble and just keep one problem on the table at a time. Yeah, rather than exacerbating it through self-judgment and blame.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds beautiful. Um, and I love that you work with the behavioral therapy at the same time
Mhm,
and rewiring the brain
mhm.
of how we think about things and how we look at things. Because for me, that was such a key component in this work because I feel like I'd been through a lot of therapy, I'd been through a lot of spiritual practice, but my brain, the physical brain, the way that it connected with these thought patterns, that was still going on there.
For
And
sure.
so no matter how much I knew I wanted to do something differently, it was still every once in a while firing in there.
Of course.
More
Yeah,
than
that's all
every
that
once in a while.
autopilot thinking that we talk about, right? The brain gets trained to go in a particular direction. And listen, if you are working through and you find yourself over in the shame self-judgment bucket, it's not now I have to shame and judge myself for being in the shame self-judgment bucket.
Exactly.
Oh my
Exactly.
gosh, right?
Yeah.
No. Just notice it and bring love and compassion and kindness to it. Like, yeah, I've been taught a lot of lessons. And maybe I've been told by a lot of people that I'm not worthy and I'm unlovable and I'm a loser and I can't do anything right. And what's your problem? And yada, 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 like all that. Like there are a lot of valid, very valid reasons why you go to shame and self-judgment. And so you're unlearning. You're in a process of unlearning because your brain and your nervous system has become so conditioned to just hear it, accept it, believe it. And healing has so much to do with challenging it. And that's where, yes, a lot of the tools in Beyond Surviving come in practical ways. Because just knowing I need to challenge the negative beliefs, I mean, it's a nice idea. I think most people
Yeah.
like get it, of course. But how do I actually do that? How do I actually put my hands back on the steering wheel of my brain? And throughout Beyond Surviving, we add in a lot of different tools because there are a lot of beautiful different ways to do that.
Yeah.
And so the more robust your toolkit is, then when you find yourself slipping into that, then you can access and resource your toolkit to help you move your energy back to where it's going to be the most empowering and supportive.
I love that. And everybody here, yeah.
Oh, the
Oh,
comment. Oh, thank you for the comment about my hair. That's sweet. Thank you.
yeah. She's like Botticelli's Venus, I swear.
Oh my gosh.
Gorgeous. It's gorgeous. And Willow Love says, yes, cognitive behavioral therapy has been a lifesaver for her too.
Mm,
That's
mm,
beautiful.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So everybody here is really familiar with the bucket. And I talk a lot
Yeah,
about the box and changing our story. So there's all these practical ways that we can do it. And and for me, it is another spiritual practice
sure.
of
Yeah.
changing the brain. And because we are in the 3D for right now, and and working with that energy. So it is really interesting in how that works. And even I was with somebody the other day, and they were talking about um, uh, everything in the heart, and how
Mhm.
that also is like another brain almost when you feel things in your
Yes.
heart, and how it connects with the rest of your body. And it's just, yeah,
Mhm.
so much energy, so much energy
Well,
to change. Yeah.
very much so. I mean, when I start to geek out about the brain, right? Neurons are excitable cells. I mean, just think about that. It's like these little, neurons are like popping around. They're just so excited. I think, and that's like a lot of energy. I'm like, being over here, and I want to connect with you, and I want to connect with you. And there's just all this like, it's like the largest community, that you have in your head of
Yeah.
all these interconnected wires. And it is energy, right? Your brain is lighting up or not, right? And those signals are passing billions of neurons. Yeah.
Mhm.
You have your own little universe. Well, it's not little. Isn't that a contradiction in terms? Little universe. But you have a whole universe in your mind and your brain, and then absolutely all of the nerves, right? We have our parasympathetic nervous system and everything that's signaling all the time, right? Everything I'm doing right now is because there's energy coursing through my body. Me being able to gesture, me being able to modulate my voice, me being able to, make eye contact, move, laugh. And
Yeah.
so part of, I think, what is so sad and heartbreaking about trauma is it's like it puts this it's like, well, walking through life with a dead battery.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And there's this way in which I could go through the motions. I got to work, I did the things, and some things I even excelled in. But my internal system was like a dead battery. I couldn't really sense, I couldn't really feel. And if I started to feel, I didn't want to feel because I didn't know how to hold space for it. And so then I would numb it all out again, right? I would unplug it, right?
Mhm.
And
Been there.
so, yeah,
Yeah.
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 And that
Um,
self-judgment thing is like that too, right? It's literally like unplugging ourselves from our life force, from our power, from choice, from potential, from possibility, and leaving ourselves detached and disconnected from the energy that's accessible to us all the time.
yeah, it's twice as hard. It makes everything twice as hard.
Yeah.
It seems like when you let it go and change your story, you have so much more physical energy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you
And
do.
and all types of energy. Yeah.
In all types of things, because here's the thing, when your nervous system is dysregulated, your system is doing a lot of work, actually, a lot, because you're going to have higher sensitivity to data input. So all the sounds, all the sights, all the smells. So now your system's trying to like basically hold all of that at bay, right?
Yeah.
Your your sensitivities and your reactivities to, why did that person just look at me that way on the bus, they're a complete stranger, they don't know you, they don't care, but we will interpret all of the world around us as danger, 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 danger. And so when your nervous system is in that state of hyper alert and hyper vigilance, every move you make, you're in, even if you're not consciously aware of it, but every move you make, your body is essentially saying, I could die at any second, my survival is at risk. Walking into this meeting, my life is on the line. And so all the energy that you have to use just to, what I describe as, white knuckle it through the day. You end the day exhausted, spent. And of course, when we're that exhausted, it just allows all of the gremlins, they're like, oh, you tired? Let me come hang out. tell you about yourself and tell you the worst things and the most horribleness and make you remember all the things you ever did that you ever regretted.
Yeah.
And so when we're more highly resourced and we have that nervous system regulation, it literally is like claiming energy, taking
Right.
it back. I don't have to spend all my energy on just getting through my day. I can spend my energy on love and connection and hanging out at the beach or whatever it is, writing that book. It doesn't matter, right? But your
Yeah.
energy gets to now be spent towards the things, and you're going to have higher resilience and less susceptible to the shame gremlins.
Yeah, not just the shame gremlins, but also to disease and,
100%.
yeah, dis-ease.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. It's, I walked with all that for a long time, and
Yeah.
it's hard.
It
Yeah,
is. It is. 'Cause yeah, again, it's tricky because, well, I have all these headaches all of the time, or gosh, my body is just so sore all the time, or I feel fatigued and exhausted or have all these aches and all these pains. And so what's really true is that when we do, trauma healing work and resolve trauma and heal the nervous system, we actually get a better baseline for what's going on for you physically, because it's like, well, let me take that off the table and see what we're left with. And oftentimes people stop having those headaches, stop having those aches and pains, or now we can focus in on the ache and pain is actually here, and now we can discern better if there's a physiology, something going on.
right. It's like
Yeah.
when I broke my ankle, years ago, I, um I was just in so much pain, I couldn't walk on it for, I think, a couple of months,
Hmm.
and I didn't realize at the same time, because I was so focused on it, that I'd actually had a really bad sprain on my other ankle, and so it's like you have this part of you that needs to be healed, and then you
Yeah.
realize, "Oh, yeah, I have to work on that one too,
Hmm.
and take
Hmm.
care of all these other things," but yeah,
Totally.
yeah, regulating our nervous system, right, Willow? Yeah. Really
Hmm.
important. Um, so, I don't know if we wanna talk about, some of your methods for doing that yet, or if we wanna,
Sure.
because everybody here has heard a few of them from me, but,
Hmm.
but there's so many different ways to heal from this, and I think one of my favorite ways that you talk about is curiosity, because I
Yeah.
think that's one of the beginnings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really is. It's so true. More and more as I get deeper and deeper into this work, and even just in being in relationship with people in my world and friendships, and when we can slow down and start from the place of curious. Let me get curious about that. Let me investigate that. Let me not take it just at face value, whether it's my reaction or my interpretation or my internal thought. And so, when it comes to, I'll stay close to the topic for today. When it comes to self judgment and shame based thinking, I think that slowing it down when you start to hear the negative mantras running, to slow down and start to get curious and go, where's that coming from? Whose voice is that really? 9 times out of 10, you're gonna realize, "Oh, that was mom," or "That's dad," or "That was that caregiver," or "That was that teacher," or "That was that partner." It's not even my own voice that is the owner of that particular message. Where did I learn that? Is a
Right?
great question to ask. Hmm,
Yeah.
where did I learn that I'm unlovable? Who
Mhm.
taught me that lesson? Mhm,
Yeah. So, and there's a few, lovely people in our group here that
mhm,
have asked that question and come back to, like, some childhood trauma of
yeah,
bullies or whatever, there's trauma there.
yeah,
Um, and, um, and then in that respect, that's a whole 'nother ball game, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah, to
Well, in the
revisit.
sense that, I mean, most of the time, that is the work. It's for you to be able to get perspective and distance. Because when it's chattering internally and you're owning it as yours, this is me. These are the ideas I have. And
Mhm.
therefore, we like to be the expert about ourselves, so it must be right. We don't like to be wrong about ourselves, so I must be right. We love to believe ourselves. But so when you slow that down and you go, wait a second, this is that like mean teacher from fourth grade who told me I was no good at math. Like, what? Like, that has nothing to do with me. It's so
Yeah.
separate. Yeah. And fine, if it takes you into a moment, an experience of trauma, like I heard that or I got that message in the midst of being abused, there are going to be other tools and other things that you do then to like integrate that experience. But a really great one is just rewriting the narrative. So you can do that a couple of different ways. You can either change what the person said or did in your imagination, or you can change what you said or did in reaction to it. Right. So let me see if I can come up with a light example. So one of the things that my ex-husband would say to me over and over again is that I was disposable.
Wow.
And so that, in conjunction with other traumas and childhood trauma I experienced, created in me a script that said, be always on watch for whether you're wanted or unwanted.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. And so in a new partnership, when I noticed that I was starting to have this anxiety and this worry and this fear, does he want me? Does he not want me? Is he into me? Is not into me? Right? Like all that dance. Yeah. And I was noticing like, this doesn't feel very empowered. This feels really like anxiety and insecure. And there isn't anything wrong with insecurities, by the way. We all have them and we're always going to have them. It's just about how we respond in those moments. And I was able to connect back to, this voice is my ex and not me. And I went back to that experience and what young Rachel did, 19-year-old Rachel, oh, bless her heart,
Yeah.
right? What did she know? But I took myself back to that memory in that moment. And there were multiple ones, right? Because again, he said that to me over the course of 10 years. So there was a lot of that being dumped into
So
me.
sorry.
But I thank you. Though in some ways,
Mhm.
Terry, I'm not sorry because it was a lesson I needed to learn. It taught me at the end of the day, what will I allow and what will I not allow to be spoken into my life? And who am I letting tell me about myself? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's, of course, here in this state. At that time, it was painful. It was painful. But so I take myself back to that moment, just one of the most clear, exact moments of when he said it. And young me just believed it. Well, yeah, of course, because it confirms everything that I already thought was true about me. And so I went back in my memory and in my imagination and I let him have it. Right.
Mhm.
And I said all the things that I wish young me could have said. She couldn't. She didn't know. She didn't have the resources then. But I can go back to that moment in time and I can give voice to it and I can stand up for myself. And in doing that, that message just drops away. And I also like in these moments, like I often usually end up visualizing the person like shrinking into like a little, do y'all remember Shrinky Dinks? Did y'all have
Yeah.
that? Am I too old for that? Do y'all know what I'm talking about?
I'm
Those
too old
little
for that.
things you color on and you put them in the oven and they shrink up into like the little bitty thing.
Oh, maybe I remember seeing that
Those.
on TV. Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I was obsessed with those as a kid. But I like to imagine they just shrinky dink and they just go shink and they become so little and so insignificant that now you know me, I like to use humor. So
Yeah.
now that booming voice, right, that had resonance and like, you are disposable. Now it's like, you are disposable. And it just cracks me up. And I'm like, that's dumb. Of course I'm not disposable. I'm a badass. I'm worthy. You see what I mean, y'all?
Yeah.
So like, you don't have to take it. You don't have to keep letting those scripts, especially the things that other people said about you, as blanket statements and true. And there are all these beautiful ways to write the new narrative and for you to be the author rather than someone else.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Changing our story.
Very much so.
And yeah, yeah, I love that part of it. And I feel like changing our story, it changes our brain so much when we do that.
Mhm.
I mean, it does empower us and
Yeah.
give us um, not domination over it, but well, maybe sometimes, right? Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, and then I found myself rewriting it in different times about, say, your ex-husband, or somebody that I was involved with that
Mhm.
was in this purpose, and, writing about them. Well, they were young and stupid, and they were really tiny, and their brain was very small. So,
All of that. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that changed everything for me too. It was a while before I could
Mm.
get there.
Okay, you wanna talk about some Jedi level shit right now?
Yes, please.
Y'all wanna work at some high levels, go back into those experiences when you hear somebody has been saying to you, "You're not lovable, you're a problem, you're disposable," and change every one of those sentences into "I am," as if it's the person speaking. So,
Ooh,
yeah.
love
So
that.
that's it. Like, when I stood there and I just thought, "He's not saying I am disposable. He's saying I am disposable." Right?
Yeah,
It's a projection of his own fear, and most of the 9 times out of 10, that is why people are cruel and mean and say nasty shit. It's because they fear it's true about themselves,
yeah,
and the easiest thing to avoid that reality is to make somebody else wrong and bad and small.
sure.
So just start to think about it like, "Wow, they weren't even saying that about me. They were saying that about themselves."
Yeah, all about them.
All about them.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Especially when we get to the stage of who's the victim and who's the abuser,
Mhm.
and whether that abuse is child abuse or and I'm not comparing the two, or somebody that says something horrible to you. It's different, but um, but the labeling,
Mhm.
when we label people, I loved that part of the book also. And
Mm.
if you want to explain that, because you're so much better at it than I am.
Yeah, well, so the idea is that we are very conditioned to categorize, and we do it with everything: fruit, vegetables, types of car, truck, animal, insect, right? We like
Yeah,
our categories, and they help us make sense of the world in a lot of ways. But the way that we also do this is by labeling other people: geek, loser, pain in the ass, caregiver, compassionate. We use all these different labels and identities: hero, scapegoat, surrogate spouse, surrogate parent. And again, like when we're in relationship with other people, there can be a way in which a label can help us to some extent understand, you know, identity and
sure.
how they most show up. But we can also get into a lot of trouble with that labeling because we also do this thing called hyperfocus or tunnel vision. And so we'll get into patternings with people in our lives like, "You are always difficult."
Mhm.
"You always have to be right." Yeah. "Oh, you're so critical." Someone this weekend called me a control freak, Terry. And I was like, "Oh, you're not putting me in that box, honey. So sorry. Mm-mm." Right?
Right,
But right? They think they get this data. I have this data, I have this information, and therefore you are blank.
right.
So when we do that, we are first of all boxing ourselves, labeling ourselves if we're in relationship with somebody, right?
Yeah,
If my husband is incompetent and incapable, then I have to be the problem solver and, hold it all together, right? So it's a complex idea. I'm struggling a little in describing it in this moment, Terry, because I'm thinking about all the foundations that lead up to this particular
Oh,
tool.
sorry.
No, no, it's okay. You don't have to apologize.
Okay.
I'm just thinking about, so how do I make it approachable when I don't have all of the other frameworks? So bottom line is just start to notice the ways that you label yourself and the ways that you label other people. Right now, like, I'm showing up in, I am the caregiver, I am the problem solver, I am the people pleaser, my partner is difficult, my sister is a whiner, like whatever it is, and just notice how limited that is. Nobody is ever
Oh,
one
yeah.
thing.
And
Yeah.
I've got a great one. I'm the mom and my adult children are the child,
Yeah,
right? And
exactly.
they're not. They are, divine beings and
Yeah,
strong and
yeah,
amazing. Yeah.
yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when we can start to unbox
Mhm.
people and get curious
Mhm.
about what we're doing, then we often can just see a broader spectrum of who they are, of who we are. Our relationships become more dynamic and interesting, and just more compelling. We get to relate in just more dynamic ways. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, um, there's 4 soul questions and that I've been trained with and at the
Mm.
Chopra Center, and it's who am I?
Mm.
What do I want? Why am I here? And what am I grateful for?
Mm.
And I think that this whole uh, uh, book that you've written and the coaching method it goes through all of that. Like, who am I? Because being curious about that is huge.
Yeah.
What do I want? I
Mm.
mean, that's a big one. And we don't stop and think about that. But if we're no longer super mom, then
Mhm.
who am I?
True.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that facetiously, believe me.
Letting it go, letting it go, letting it
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why am I
Yeah.
here? That's like,
Totally,
you know,
totally. Yeah.
go figure. But yeah. And then at the end, getting to that grace
Yeah.
of that totally raises your vibration, but it also probably really raises your um, adrenaline or whatever you're getting out of that, your hormones,
Mhm.
that you're getting some beautiful hormones or whatever they're called.
True.
So, yeah.
As you're sharing that, Terry, I'm thinking about my answer as not knowing exactly where you were heading with all that, but as you were asking those questions, my answer to every single one of them was love.
Oh, that's
And
so beautiful.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's ultimately, I think, is very much at the heart. I want people to understand love for self, love for others, uninhibited, unhindered. Yeah. That our purpose and existence, and we all want love. So
Yeah.
how do I create that? And how do I do that? With empowered communication, setting boundaries, like all of the tools ultimately there, I think, come back to wanting to create, generate, or protect love.
Yeah. Wow. Well, there you go.
There you go.
The next
Should we
book.
catch up with the chat a little bit and see if we have comments or questions?
Yeah, let's do. And there was a beautiful one. I'm not going to name names if anybody doesn't want to ask them, but one of our beautiful members is asking, Coach Rachel, if you don't mind me asking, was your ex ever moody or aggressive, like throw stuff, punch walls? I have some stuff I'm dealing with, is why she's asking.
I see. Yes, that relationship was harmful and dangerous and volatile. We were both physically abusive. That began, I think most of the time mine came from a place of defense, but nevertheless, but yeah, it was volatile. It was physically abusive, mentally, emotionally abusive. I was more of the thrower of things than he was. And so I hate that you're navigating that. And for me, just with full transparency, at that time in my life, I didn't even have the capacity to walk away. Like, he ended the relationship. I didn't end it. But thank God he did. And I was able to, find myself and step out of that. And it can be very hard, when we're in those circumstances, especially if so much of us feels like, maybe I deserve this, or I can't get anything better, or, of course, so much of what my experience was, which is common for people who are in, DV relationships, is the feeling of like, oh, if I could just figure this thing out. Oh, if I could just stop doing this thing. Like, I bought
Right.
that, hook, line, and sinker from him. When I finally quit, blah, blah, blah. None of this will ever happen again. He'll never lose his temper again. And all of it's bullshit. It's
Yeah.
not going to happen unless there's intervention, unless the person truly, truly, truly sees and owns their behavior. So I hope you can stay safe, and I hope you can find support and maybe find a way to remove yourself from that circumstance, if at all possible. If there's anything I can do to support you with that, I'm here. You can reach out.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too, dear. I feel like, I was there in so many different ways, so many times. And I love that, I go back to sometimes thinking about that and understanding that we didn't have the coping mechanisms
Right.
as children, or whatever happened to us at whatever age. It doesn't matter. If
Sure.
you're 19, you don't have the coping mechanisms. If you're 55, you don't. Like, if
Yeah. If you haven't
somebody
learned it, you haven't learned it, no matter what your age is. Yeah.
right. And giving ourselves a lot of love for that.
100%.
That
Yeah.
we're not born equipped for some of these things that
Mhm.
immediately happen.
Yeah.
Mary Starshine says, Neil Donald Walsh said, "What is it in you that hurts so bad that it makes you whoops? It makes you disappear. It makes you want to hurt me. Remember this when people attack or judge me."
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. There is this way, I think, that I'm gonna draw a very clear line here between people who are being physically aggressive or intimidating, or violent, and people who are just struggling to communicate, and they're kind of doing just a really shitty job of telling us that they're hurting or
Yeah.
that they're scared. And so it comes out as, accusation or attack, or, whatever it might be. And so, yeah, if the foundations are there in a relationship, there can be a lot to be gained by getting curious in those moments. Again, not like, you don't get to talk to me that way. Like this, I'm not saying this is okay.
Right.
And yeah, there's something happening over there that is causing you to show up this way with me. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Tyler agrees with that. He's going to take care of everybody here.
Awesome. Yeah, and if we've missed anything in the thread that you want to repost, please feel free to do so. I know it's kind of hard to
Yeah.
keep up
Please
with
do.
everything. But yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for your
Somebody else
engagement.
says healing becomes a spiritual practice and our gift.
Mhm.
And then let's see. So another member says, it's been a little over 2 years since I left my abusive ex. About 6 months since I'm aware of his last stalking. Oh, honey.
Mhm.
Yeah.
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 Building up that internal sense of safety. And this is true whether, we're working on that through the lens of childhood experiences, young adult traumas. When we have been violated, harmed, intimidated, in these ways, right? Regaining a sense of safety is important, and that is an internal job. It actually has very little to do with your environment. The environment can help, and having quiet, peaceful space can help, but ultimately your own internal sense of safety. And that's really deep and really layered, and more than we'll get into. And maybe that's the next topic, Miss Terry.
There you go.
But yeah,
Yeah.
send lots of love to you and to anyone else here. You know, I see stories coming through about people having these experiences, and just sending y'all lots of love as you find your way.
The
It's tough.
abusive relationships. Yeah. It's, I remember being in a relationship and just thinking, I'm just going to wait until the kids are old enough.
Right.
And that's it. And God, that takes so much weight and so much strength, and you're just kind of numb from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah. Yeah. Another member says, thank you. It takes a lot of strength to hold back, not feeding the fire and all. We have 3 kids, and I thank you for saying all of this. It goes away and then a blow up, looking at options.
Yeah. Well, of course, I mean, that's the realness of it is, you know, I love my partner and my husband. He wasn't shitty all the time. It would be easy if somebody was terrible every single day, 24/7. That might be a little bit easier, right? No, there's something really seriously, but no, like, he was loving, he was kind, he was funny. You know, and he could be very adoring. And that's, you know, it's so challenging because there are parts of this person that we truly love, and there are parts of them that are truly trying to love as well. And then we get stuck in this, you know, abuse cycle of like honeymoon, and then it kind of like, it's okay, and then, you know, the breakdown, and then, you know, the coming back together, which actually can create a lot of like, you know, high adrenaline and not cortisol, oxytocin. And so we, in some ways, can get it in. It's not like I'm going to use the word lightly, but a little bit of an addictive pattern, right? Because that makeup time can feel so good and so reassuring and so satisfying. So breaking out of that cycle, you know, sometimes you have to step completely away from each other and really do your own healing before you can come back together. Sometimes you can do it with, you know, some great support. And then sometimes people just don't have it in them. They, you know, to break out of that pattern while there's, you know, in that dynamic and in that relationship. So
yeah,
I hope for yours and the kids that you all, it's worrisome, right? When the kids are there and thinking about what's being modeled for them and what kind of experiences, and you want to do the best by them and by yourself and by your partner. And it's layered.
it is layered. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Another person here says, I stopped whistling because my ex said I looked ugly when doing so. I'm whistling again.
Love that. Oh my
I
gosh.
do love that. Yeah.
Really good.
Another member says, sometimes I think that some of us who survive trauma never become whole again, and we become warriors because we are a survivor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you feel like this has recently come in with some other courses that I've taken, is people say that sometimes we leave soul fractals of ourselves in places if we don't heal. Then, like if something happens to you as a child, that in the spiritual word I've heard that called a soul fractal, so that like a fraction of yourself that you leave behind. And I thought that was interesting. I'd never thought about that in that way, but to become whole again, to go back and pick it back up and get it in the rotation.
Are we talking literally like physically going to a place or an experience, or are we talking like
No.
in the mind, in the spirit to go reclaim it? I mean, okay.
Yeah.
I need to go to the front porch and there's my little fractal of self and pick it up. Yeah. I mean, I think that's true. There's this way in which we can become fractured, we can become disconnected. You know, my definition of wholeness is embracing all parts of self. And I think anybody can do that, whether you've experienced trauma or not. And so when wholeness is framed as this idea of like, I have to be like always good and always healed and always at my best, it goes almost back to where we first started today, right? We're setting up a context for ourselves that doesn't really actually exist. But the ways in which we become disconnected from ourselves. So I guess I hold some of that idea, right? Like there are these ways in which like the parts of myself that I punished or I pushed away or I blamed, became
Yeah.
disconnected from, and I can go and reclaim those parts of myself, and I can reclaim my life, and I can reclaim my joy, and my sense of self and my badassery, and all of those things, and then I can start to embrace all that is Rachel, right? Which
Yeah.
is like, I can be kind of snotty sometimes, quite honestly, and I can be super, kind, and like I just give space to it all.
Yeah.
I don't put any value judgment on any of it. Something I went to a meditation retreat a couple of weeks ago, and there was so much that I walked away with from that. But one of the things that was super compelling for me was what happens when we start to love the darkness as much as the light. And I want to find different language for that because it is very yin and yang, right?
Mhm.
And that there is that. And so again, it's like, what happens when I start to just love all of the parts without even labeling it as that's the dark part and that's the light part?
Yeah.
'Cause, by the way, sometimes people are too light and
Yeah.
it's actually not good. You
No.
know, you ever
Yeah.
meet those like super syrupy sweet people and you're like, mm-mm. Like, you've got too much light. Okay. You need a little dark over here, right?
Yeah.
Balance it out, honey. So that's all I mean to say. Like, if we can just stay out of value judgments of it and just say, this is the whole self. This is all that I am. I embrace and love it all. Um, I think that's where it's at. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. I want more information about that retreat too.
Yeah.
Well,
Um,
oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
I gotta get running, right? I got a call coming up soon.
Yeah.
So as we start to wrap up, I do want to mention that I have this upcoming training, which is a nice follow-on from the conversation that we've had having today. Now, Terry, I'm not able to actually click into the comments and put the link there.
Oh,
Um, so
okay. For your, I think I've still got one for your website.
no, this is for the Thrive Tribe. So
Oh,
I'm
the
just gonna
Thrive Tribe.
email it to you, and hopefully it'll
Okay.
come through really fast, and then
Okay.
you'll be able to grab the link and drop it. I'll say it out loud. It's not the easiest, but it's thrivetribe.vip / T as in Tom dash shame dash purchase. So this is a new thing that I'm doing, Terry.
Oh, I'm so
About
excited.
every other month, I'm partnering with my friend Cass, who does beautiful work around trauma healing, and one of her primary lenses is EFT, and we complement each other very nicely. And so our next Thrive Tribe workshop is going to be on shame,
Oh,
and really getting down and more into the nitty gritty of like specific tools for releasing shame and self-judgment. And so if anybody wants to come along for that ride, then I encourage you to pop on over and check that out and grab a ticket for it. And yeah, and if you can't get the link or you have questions, just email me, coach@rachelgrantcoaching.com, and I can make sure. And then beyond that, yeah, for sure, rachelgrantcoaching.com is a great way to go to learn more about me and the Beyond Surviving program. And also just check out all the free resources there, like the monthly drop-in group and the Facebook page and the podcast and all that jazz.
okay. And then I'll go into that. And there we go.
Oh, Gazillion. Look at that. How awesome.
Design.
Okay.
I'm impressed with myself. I'll add that story. I'll take that.
Amazing. Well, you beautiful people, please remember trauma is not a life sentence. And if I can be of any support to you in your journey, I'm here. Reach out. Thank you so much for just being here and for engaging and sharing yourselves and your questions. And Terry, thank you for making this just such a cool space to come and hang out in. What an amazing community you're building. Cheers and applause for Miss Terry, for you living in your highest self and showing up in the world in the way that you care about the most. I love it. I'm so proud of you. And I look forward to the next conversation we get to have down the road.
I'd love that. Okay. Thanks so much, Rachel. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye,
Bye, everybody.
everybody.